Okay, welcome to another video. Before I start, I just would like to say that this isn't going to be a regular video. This is something that's quite a bit different. And if you think it's hobby related, it is slightly, but not mainly. And if you're looking for something to distract you, I would say probably don't watch this video. I don't expect to get many views. I'm not even sure if I'll post it, but this is just something I wanted to talk about as a sort of a self-healing type of discussion. Now out in front of me, I have the current project that I'm working on right this second, and that is my Germans for bolt action. Now these happen to be Waffen SS, but that's only because my local gaming store did not have the Grenadier Army in stock, but they did have one of these. So I bought this, and I decided to give it a shot. There's also a troll from Lord of the Rings, armored troll, over there, but that's just because he was on my desk and I was moving stuff around, and I decided to give him some camera time. And what I'm going to talk about is the reasons for starting a channel in the first place, and a lot of the reason why updates, either they come in bunches or they don't come at all. And it's got to do with depression and the struggles of the human mind and mental health. So that's why I say don't continue on with this. There's really nothing good to be gained from this. This is more of a self-help thing. And there's my cat, just to annoy me, but he loves that little ball and he wants me to play with him. But yeah, it's a talk about depression and why I started the channel. And mainly, it's to occupy my mind, and it's to help me focus and get through the days. And when you suffer from depression, there are some very dark days, really dark days. Today is one of those days, to be honest. I told my wife this morning, can't do it today, can't go to work today. So here I am in the basement with my cat, living the dream, as they say. And it's also to talk about the hobby in general and wargaming and what it's meant to me personally, both good and bad, and how wargaming can be a very lonely hobby. I mean, if you're lucky enough to be in a place like England or some of the places in the United States where you have gaming groups and a social aspect of wargaming, it can be a blast. But if you're unlucky or you're living in a isolated community or far away from the main group of like-minded enthusiasts, it can be probably one of the loneliest things going. With wargaming, there's either a great social aspect to it or there's zero social aspect. And I happen to live in an area where there's zero. The area that I live in is a changing community, and the immigration is, as the community has changed to the point where wargaming is no one even knows what it is. Like, what do you mean? You paint and play with toy soldiers? Like, get a life, like get to work, make money. And the people who did play wargaming have moved off. They've moved out, moved on. But anyway, that's a tangent. This video will be a bit rambly, and I really apologize for that. I really do. But like I said, it's more for me than anyone else. It may not even be posted, just to get stuff off my mind. And well, first, I'd like to start off the video. And again, the SS are just here to have something on the screen, while I talk. And I was sort of motivated to speak on camera by a fellow YouTuber. Obviously, we're not in the same league, but Winters SEO. And I was perusing YouTube like everybody else one of the days, and I seen a heartfelt video from him about his struggles with depression. And I was going through, at that time when I seen that video, I was going through a lot of deep, dark days then. And the old adage, misery loves company, when I seen his video and I listened to what he had to say, I thought, I felt a little better about myself, a little less alone would be the best word. And I know mental health has a lot of stigmas to it, and it really does have a lot of stigmas. You just can't overcome them. And hearing others suffer with a very similar thing to me makes me feel oddly better. Like, it's hard to describe. You'd have to go through it. But if there's anyone out there who happens to watch this video and is going through similar things, maybe my misery might make them feel a little better too. Um, I'm a very comical guy. I'm a very animated guy. I get told all the time by people who I talk to, especially at work, that I should be a comedian, or that I have a way of explaining things that makes the situations come alive. I've heard people tell me that I make the most mundane stories about going to get a coffee into a Seinfeld episode. And, those things are good for a laugh, but there's nothing Seinfeld about life, really. It's a good for a laugh, but it's been rough, and it comes and goes. But I'll try to be as organized and as quick about this as possible. But I do apologize if it gets a little rambly and if I get off point. I did take notes, so you might hear me turn a page, but that's just to keep myself as on track as I can. But I was officially, I guess, diagnosed last year with depression. And one of the problems about being diagnosed with depression by a psychiatrist and a doctor and all the rest in 2020 is that everyone has depression in some form. Thank you to COVID and isolation. And sometimes people, when you say that you suffer from depression or that you're not feeling mentally well, they chalk it up to COVID all the time. And for me, it just happens to be something that I've lived with for a long, long, long time. And only now can I not deal with it. And I need to verbalize it and get professional help. It's just been a really shit time. But as shit as it's been for everybody, for me, life hasn't changed really at all due to COVID. Isolation? Not seeing friends? No problem. I don't have any friends, and I spend the majority of my time with my cat in my basement. So someone tells me to stay at home for a week and don't go outside, I'm totally fine with that. I'm in my element. So it's hard for someone suffering with what they suffer with, like me, to say I suffer from depression without getting the rolling of the eyes, like, oh yeah, hasn't the year been so terrible? Oh yeah, I'm not really talking about this year, but okay. And then you just stop talking. You just stop talking because you don't want to minimize their problems or overcomplicate your own. So you just stop. But I was officially diagnosed last year with depression. At first, the diagnosis was I had sort of a mental breakdown in the summer. And a lot of things were going on at work that I just couldn't process. And I finally had a mental breakdown, and my family doctor said it was burnout, not depression. Everyone's got depression. It's not depression, it's burnout. So I took 4 weeks off work, and that's where I got my little cat here. We found him, or my wife's parents found him abandoned. His mother had died, and he was sickly. We got brought him home. He was so sick, and we didn't know if he was going to survive the first few nights. But here he is, bugging the crap out of my models and playing with that little orange ball that he loves so much. But I took the 4 weeks off work, and all I did during the 4 weeks off work was stress about taking time off work, about what it would be like when I go back. What's wrong with me? What have I done? What am I doing to myself? You just go through the whole thing, and instead of taking the time to relax and to unwind and reset, I spent the whole time stressing. And if I didn't have the little cat with me, the little kitten with me, I don't know what would have happened. Suicide and self-harm and all the rest of that stuff is constant. It happens, I think about it every second of every day in everything. When they're diagnosing you with depression, they say, like, oh, do you think of self-harm at least once a day? Well, yeah, I absolutely do. And in fact, it's way more than once a day. It's every waking moment. Oh, come in and see us. Go get some professional help. But it's not been easy, and wargaming has been a way of getting through it, and hobbying and modeling and painting and collecting and researching and all the other things that come along with it. Um, to the point where I think it's become sort of an addiction for me. And if I could pan my camera around, you would understand, but I won't because it's a mess. But times got so bad that I once, shockingly to myself to say this, I once left the house and went to go do something and finally end it. And I was stopped. I was stopped just as I was psyching myself up to do it. A lady and her daughter pulled into the parking lot next to me, and the parking lot was empty. They could have parked anywhere. 2,000 parking spaces. And they parked right next to me. I was the only one in the parking lot. And my car had heavily tinted windows, so at night they couldn't see that I was even there. And then I was stuck there. I couldn't do anything. I couldn't move. I was frozen for so long that I couldn't even start the car and drive off, because then they'd be like, oh my God, there was someone in that car the whole time. And I tried to wait them out, but they friggin' wouldn't leave. For 3 hours, they wouldn't leave. They just sat there and were talking. I heard all their conversation. I couldn't turn my radio on. I couldn't start the car. I just lay there in the car. But anyway, to the point is that just couldn't go through with it. Kind of got frustrated that I went home. I was given enough time to calm down by these people who have no idea that I was there. But when they finally left, I just went home because I was just too tired. I wanted to go home, so I went home. And that's when I realized that I needed to deal with it differently. I couldn't just deal with it by myself. I needed to get the professional help. And I told my wife, I need to go to counseling. I need to go see someone. It's serious. And I did. And I hope others out there can do the same. And I hear all the time from people, get help, seek help, find help, talk to someone. I'm not going to lie to you. I'm going to tell you to do that, but I know full well, as you might do, that's just not, that doesn't do anything. Professional help helps you get through the days, but the depression is there still. They give you medication, but the medication, depending on which one they give you, the medication might make things worse. But the medication that I was given made me docile. It made me a zombie. It put me basically to sleep. I was walking around with no energy, couldn't do anything. I didn't even have the energy to commit suicide, let alone find a place to do it. And it served a purpose, I guess, for my wife and my child and my family. It served a purpose for them because I'm still around. Bought them time to get me help and to talk to me. But it didn't stop the thoughts. It's hard to explain, but it didn't stop the thoughts. And during that whole time, all I would do is sit either in my basement or in my living room, and I would collect and paint, and there we go, cat. Just collect stuff, paint stuff, assemble stuff, buy stuff, search stuff online. And for instance, buying these plastic Warlord Games figures. Will it zoom in there for me? Whoops. I don't know what I'm doing here. The lighting's all off. But anyway, buying Warlord Games figures and researching the army lists and stuff, it occupies your mind. It gives you a little bit of excitement. But when the products come in and you realize now you have to paint them, it's kind of like I don't have the energy. It's kind of like a punch right in the face. Not only have you spent $50, but you also have to spend a month painting these things. And I spent from July 2020 to March 2021 sitting down. If I wasn't at work, I was at home sitting down. It took a huge toll. But I'm starting to ramble. I took, like I said, I took the advice of other hobbyists on YouTube, like Winters SEO, and I went to get the professional help. And what I found from getting the professional help is that it didn't work. It got so bad that I needed the medication, and I've been on weekly visits to a psychologist. I mean, usually a psychologist is once a month, once every 2 weeks type of thing, but I'm on weekly visits because that's how concerned they are. And I did all those things. I took the medication, I went to the visits, but nothing seemed to help. I was really honestly confused by the whole process. The psychologist sessions were an hour and a half long, and typically they went to 2 hours long because I couldn't understand what he was saying. I didn't get it. They're no fault of him, but he's trying different methods to see what will work with me. And everyone is different, so what works with me won't work with you, and what works with you wouldn't work with me, and on and on and on. And so much of that time, like when you want to harm yourself, when you finally like me, when you've had enough, when you just can't take another thing, weekly visits is fine for an hour and a half. You're in there for an hour and a half. There's some tears, there's some anger, there's some, exhaustion. And then you have to leave there. And then you have to go live a life, socialize with coworkers, talk to customers. It's such a shit process. And it seemed like whatever good would come out of the hour and a half visits, and this is how they would go. They would break down exactly like this for me, not for everyone. I'm only assuming, but for me, an hour and a half. You spend 40 minutes telling them, basically fighting the process. 40 minutes. Then there's a breakthrough, and you spend 10 minutes physically helping yourself through talking, and then you spend the next 40 minutes closing the session. So for out of an hour and a half, you'd really only be getting help for 10 minutes, because the rest of the time would be spent either trying to get to the root of the problem that day, and then the rest of the time would be spent trying to set yourself up for the week ahead. And that the session was undone 20 minutes after I left. One thing would go wrong. Someone would say something. There'd be a problem somewhere along the line in your daily life that everyone deals with. I'm not saying I'm special, but something would go wrong. And then I'd have to wait for the whole week of that to go by before I'd see the psychiatrist again. And it was like one step forward, 6 steps back. And it became exhausting. The medications, they buy time, like I said earlier. They're just buying time for you to sort this out. And the medications, they're, here we go, yeah. They're all different, and they all do different things, and they affect different people different ways, and it's... you're basically a guinea pig for the first while. And now, I don't know how many people take antidepressants, but the ones that I'm on, or that I was on, they take up to 6 weeks to start seeing any effects. Now, when you're suffering, and someone says, here, take this pill, it's kind of like you're hoping it's like an Advil or an aspirin or, something for a chest pain or for a head pain, headache. You're hoping within 45 minutes that you're going to start to feel better. But when you're told, hey, 4 to 6 weeks before you start seeing any effects, what are you talking about? I don't have 6 weeks. Yeah, I have to go through misery for 6 weeks before this pill will do anything? And my wife, and she's like, oh well, hey, at least it's something. At least we're on the right track. Yeah, but I have no energy for this track, and I'm assuming it's probably the same for everyone. And that's why I'm just talking about it. Is that there is a point to this? It's just let's get through the bad stuff first. When you tell someone, it's like going to a hospital and having your leg cut off, and you're in this excruciating pain, and they inject you with morphine. And like, okay, in about 7 hours that'll start working. Well, how am I going to survive 7 hours? Like, I'm not going to survive 7 hours. It's, I don't know, it's exacerbating to be told that. You know, and in these sessions at the therapist, or not therapist, at the psychologist, I'd ask him, like, frankly, like, what the hell's wrong with me? Like, what's going on? Why can't I just function in daily life? What happened from 2019 to 2020 that has made me such a mess? Even though I had all these problems before 2019, I was still able to like function. Now I'm not able to function. And the answer was just, quite frankly, that hey, your glass is full. You basically have ingested or taken in as much information or problems as you can, and now you're at your limit. And everyone has that line. And it's up to you and me, but to you as a person to realize when that line is. Have you crossed that line? Are you at that line? Is there a little bit more you have to go? And through the many visits to this psychologist, he diagnosed me with PTSD that I didn't even know I had. The brain is a wonderful thing, and it makes all kinds of defense mechanisms, and it has a way of getting you through life by just ignoring the bad stuff to the point that you completely forget it even happened. So through these sessions, the PTSD added on to my list of problems that I go through. That was a shock. And the more I thought about it, I was in disbelief for like 2 months. The more I talked to him, and the more he explained things, and the more we explored things, I then started to get really angry that I was blind to it the whole time. And I won't go into what happened or why I'm that way or what it is, but suffice to say that it was a shock to me that I had somehow, even though I knew it happened, that I played it off as something normal, just something that happened. And then I went through a 2-month period where I was like, what the hell did I come to therapy for? To make things worse? Is that not the opposite of what I'm supposed to be doing? It's supposed to be helping me. In fact, this is way worse. And that's just one of the things that if you're going through this process for yourself just now, or you've been going through it, that's just one of the things that you have to understand, is that maybe it's a case of things have to get worse before they get better. The cloud has to rain before it leaves, or before it brightens up. I don't know what the analogy is. But, he diagnosed me with PTSD, severe depression, and chronic anxiety. Now, the chronic anxiety thing I kind of knew I had, but I just thought I was antisocial. But in these sessions, he videotapes me, and he plays back the video. And when he asks me certain questions and stuff, he shows me my body language of what the heck I'm doing. I'm pulling my fingers, I'm biting my nails, I'm cracking knuckles, I'm sweating, I'm burping, and it went on and on and on and on and on. And he said those are all signs of chronic anxiety. And I do remember my wife, she took me to one of her friends' house for a dinner kind of party thing. And although I knew her friend, I didn't know her friend's husband or her friend's husband's friends or anyone else at the party. And I went there, after a counseling session, kind of, I went there and I thought, I got to start somewhere. I got to start meeting people. I got to start getting my mind off stuff. And I was only there about 25 minutes before I embarrassingly had to ask my wife to drive me home. I couldn't take it. The anxiety of meeting new people and talking to people and being in a conversation just was too much, and I thought I would run out of the house. So there I was. I had to make a pathetic excuse why I had to go home. I don't even remember what it was. She would. And I left. And she went back to the party afterwards and made some excuse for me. And I sat there I sat there in my chair at my computer, and I basically bawled my eyes out. And it was another rough day. But what does all this have to do with the wargaming and the hobby? And I'm going to try and keep it on point if I can. But I use the hobby as a way to distract me from all of these things. And I've been using it as a way to distract me from all these things for many years. Countless years. And as I've gotten older, and the stress of keeping up with the bills and the family responsibilities, it's made me seem to dive deeper and deeper and deeper into this hobby both financially and time spent and time, um, and I'm kind of lost in it. I'm almost drowning in it, would be a better word. I could show you my collection, but there is more room. There's only probably room for 3 people to lie down in my basement, and the rest is boxes of stuff. Like a hoarder, like one of those people that you see on TV hoarding stuff, except mine's models, painted and unpainted and unassembled. But it's only now that I realize that I've been using this hobby as a way to keep myself afloat. And when I said earlier that it's the loneliest hobby I've ever had, when I sit down in the basement every day and I look around, it has been one of the loneliest experiences of my life. Just looking at all the crap. When I'm painting it and researching it and building it and doing all that, I love it. And then I pack it away in a box, display case, kind of like, I'll show you here, kind of like this. I pack it away, and then I stack it up and never seen again. And that's why I started this channel, to get it out of the boxes, onto the table, talk about it a little bit, remind myself why I'm proud of it. Instead of sitting here looking at it in the corners of the house, all piled up, thinking, what the hell have I done? Trying not to curse here. What the hell have I done? Get it out on the table and explain why I did it. And Kat, if you eat that figure, I'm going to freak. No? Okay, good boy. It looked like he was going to chew the head off that Waffen SS, although I couldn't say I blame him. The effect that this hobby has had on me and my family has been extreme. And I know I'm not the only one out there that has this problem. I wish I was one of those people that lived in an area that had a wargaming club where you didn't have to collect every figure, every model yourself and paint them all yourself and then play with yourself at the end of all that. I would love to just have a small army like this, go to a club, play someone's Russians, play someone's Americans, blah, 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 and just go home, But no, I have to collect every side, every figure, and then play the game by myself, with myself. And it's such a depressing prospect that I rarely ever play a game. I mean, I played a game on Saturday. This is now May in 2021. I played a game on Saturday with my wife on our dining room table with no terrain, just bare table, some figures, some dice. And that was the first game I've played. First time I've rolled dice. 7 months, 4 months, I don't know, a while. And I've not always been a wargamer, and this is the crux of it. I've not always been a wargamer, right? I started off, I lived in Ireland, and I started off as a sports person, soccer or football, or I started off as not a jock, but someone who was more interested in outside activities than painting or wargaming. And I did always have a love of history and military history, but I never came across in figures or painting, or more just in movies or in video games maybe, or something like that. But that all changed when I moved to Canada. In Ireland, it has to be said, like in Ireland, when I was a young adult, or not a young adult, a young kid and early teenager, I had friends. I had many friends. Not only friends, but I also had many cousins the same age as me that lived in and around me. And when I got up in the morning, I got my pants on, my shirt on, and trousers, I call them. And I went outside and I ran across the field and I played with my friends or with my cousins, and I had a laugh. We got up to so many hijinks, and I was happy. I remember clearly, like rose-colored goggles. I remember back fondly of my childhood. And then we moved to Canada. And all that changed. My father wanted to move to Canada, and he is a strong-willed person. And if he wants to do something, it's happening. And the consequences on the children or on the wife, or those aren't thought of. Those are after effects. Those aren't important right now. The important thing is getting it done. So we moved to Canada, and I went from having friends and family all around me to having nobody. And my dad, he didn't want to live in the city. He wanted to live in the country. And I mean the country. There's a dirt road. Let's follow that dirt road for 100 kilometers. And build a house or have a house there. So that's what he did, because he would never. He's not a bad guy. He's a great guy, a great man. But if he says this is what's happening, he does it. He doesn't double think it. He just does it. So there I am, moving from a country that has a neighborhood that has lots of friends and lots of people to an area that has nobody. And, there's only so often that you can play soccer by yourself on a dirt road, gravel road. I mean, you're kicking rocks all over the place. The winters were cold. I didn't know how to skate, so there was no hockey for me. It took me a while to learn how to skate. And then there's high school. I go to high school, and I'm in high school by myself with my brother. And my brother is a little older than me, so he wants nothing to do with me. He wants, I'm the dweeb. I'm a loser to my brother. He's 16. Who can blame him? I don't blame him. But he didn't want to be seen with me, because when we moved here first, I moved into the school, and I had no friends. I didn't know anyone. I didn't know what to do on my breaks. So I went to go find him and hang out with him, and he didn't want that. He was busy trying to make his own circle of friends, his own social circle. And, that was tough. From 14 to 18, I basically didn't have any friends. And not that I didn't want friends, it's just that couldn't, my first girlfriend only wanted to be my girlfriend. Right out of her mouth, this is what she told me when we broke up. She was only my girlfriend because I had an accent, and I was the kind of like a novelty act at school. And that's when I started to physically or try and lose my accent. And I tried to lose it as fast as possible. So you might hear it here every now and again, you might not. But that's why I don't have an accent, really. It's because of that. She said that, and it kind of broke my heart, and I said, forget that, I'm not doing that again. And then my first interaction with a kid in high school in Canada was we were being introduced in the auditorium at the school. Like, and there's new people, there's new kids in school. There's so-and-so and so-and-so. They're here from Ireland. Give them a warm welcome. So the auditorium of kids being initiated into school, they clapped. A guy came over and he said, we can't be friends because my parents are English, so, And I said, no, I don't know. Well, because you're Irish, we're English, we can't be friends. And he left. And I'm like, what the hell's he talking about? I'd never come across that before. I hear people talking about the problems in Ireland outside of Ireland, but I rarely ever heard them inside. And then another guy came over to me and said, as a joke, he's like, oh, you're Irish? I'm like, yeah. He's like, oh, I heard the Irish people can't say the letter H. I said, what? He said, Irish people can't say the letter H, can they? Who told you that? He's like, well, I've heard it. Say H. Go ahead, say it. Try and say it. Irish, I was so dumbfounded that I didn't say it. And he left laughing. And I look at my brother, I'm like, my last name starts with H. I'm Irish. Irish has H in it. I said, what? What has H in it? What? Who's teaching these kids? Anyway, he left. So that was my first 2 interactions with people. So I was a little like, man, this place is weird. But anyway, every day was spent with going home on the bus, an hour and a half drive on the bus, because we lived in the middle of nowhere. We get home. Because we live in the middle of nowhere, there's no reception on the TV, so you get nothing. You get CBC, which is junk. There's no internet. No internet company will run a cable to the house. There's no phone, because everywhere is long distance, so you can't, even if I did have a friend, I couldn't call them anyway. And there's no one to hang out with. There's no houses around to run out and play with anyone. So from 14 to 18, I was basically a hermit. And it wasn't until I got a vehicle and I was able to drive around on my own that I started to make some friends. And for a while, between 18 and 22, those 4 years were probably the most social of my life. I met a whole bunch of people. And I made a whole bunch of good friends. One of those friends introduced me to wargaming. He introduced me to Warhammer 40,000. Everyone says it. Everyone says, oh, my first thing was Warhammer 40,000. He introduced me to Warhammer 40,000. We made a pact that we were going to get into it together. I bought a Space Wolves army because back then Space Wolves were Space Vikings, not Space Dogs. And they were cool to me. And he got Ultramarines. And one of the problems that occurred from collecting Space Wolves and him collecting Ultramarines is that I had a lot of time on my hands, so I could paint the Space Wolves in a couple of weeks because I had no TV, no internet, no phone, no cell phone, no nothing. I had books on my room and grass, so I painted them in record time, and I was ready to go. And to this day, that friend has not painted those Ultramarines. He has a few of them assembled. He has some primer on some of them, some paint on some of them, but they're not done. Because he lived in the city. And, between 18 and 22, you're looking at girls, you're going to parties. He got himself acclimated to people. And me, I didn't. I couldn't. I had to drive everywhere to do anything. So, my hobby, the reason I'm saying all this is my hobby started off in a lonely place. And 25 years later, 30 years later, it's still lonely. There's still really no one around. Like, I do know people that play the game, but what I find is that they have their own group of friends, their own 2 or 3 people that they play with. And although they're welcoming to you, you're not necessary to them, to their hobby. They have a game. We're playing a game at Sunday at 7. You want to come? No, sorry, I have to work. Games can take 3 or 4 hours. I got to work up Monday at 7 o'clock. I can't go. Okay, and then just go. There's no rescheduling it. It's just, we're playing Sunday at 7 because that's best for them. And I'm not saying that's wrong. It is what it is. What I'm just saying is that when you have to drive an hour and then play a game and then drive an hour back, unless I take the next day off work, there's really it was an investment to play, And in Canada, wargamers aren't like the guy down at the end of the street's also a wargamer, or the guy across town's a wargamer. No, this is people that are 70 kilometers away, 30 kilometers away, 100 kilometers away. And when you get there, they all have, because they're so sparse, because they're so far apart, they all play different scales. Well, I have my 28mm Germans here I can bring up. Oh no, I only play in 15. Oh well, I don't have any of those. Oh well. Okay, well I'll bring my 6mm Ancients. No, I play in 28s. Oh. You know what I mean? It's hard to explain, but I know if you're still watching this video, you've been there. You know about the scale differences. And that was really the point of what I wanted to say, is that wargaming is a lonely place, and if it starts off lonely, it rarely gets any better unless you make a concerted effort or you move. And because of where I am, I'm older now. When you get kids and you want free daycare, you kind of have to live close to your grandparents. So here I am. I landed in this country in 1994. We moved to a town about 40 kilometers from the airport, and we're still here. I haven't moved. The dirt road is gone, been paved, building huge mansions on it now. Doing very well for themselves. Still no internet. They still won't run a cable. Better phone service, better reception, but that's about it. It's weird how humans do this. They landed in a whole new country. They moved 3,000 miles away, and they live 10 minutes from the friggin' airport. What's wrong with me? But I'm still here because my parents are still here. My dad's not moving. He loves that place that he bought. And I need the free daycare because I can't afford anything else. So maybe one day when I'm 60. And that's one of the things that people always say, that when I hear people saying about, the hobby is dying and it's full of gray-haired old men now. Well, I think it's mainly because gray-haired old men have the freedom to move and do things in the wargaming hobby that someone in their 20s and 30s just can't. Maybe that's what it is. Maybe there is as many 20 and 30-year-olds are in their hobby. They're just too busy trying to pay bills and get their life going and get their family looked after. Whereas the gray-haired guys, they have nothing but free time on their hands. They can get up and go out and play games and spend time. And I think that's the reason for that. I don't think the hobby's dying at all. I just think the demographics, the reason why you always see the gray-haired people at the hobby shows and stuff is because they're the ones that have the time for it. Anyway, I'm starting to ramble again. So going back to the Space Wolves and the Ultramarines, when my friend, when he gave up on the hobby, I stayed in it, and I moved on from Warhammer 40k to historicals, because when you're not playing games with people and you're just collecting stuff, you're gonna You're going to collect stuff that you like. And I just happen to like ancient history and Napoleonics. I love all that stuff, so I collect it all. And that's what really is the point of this, is that this hobby for me has been a blessing and a curse. You know, my depression sometimes is so strong that I can only see the negatives in this hobby. I can only see the money spent, the time spent, and the pile of shame. I can never see anything else during those times. I just want to burn the whole thing down, pack it all away, sell it all. And I've done that several times. Well, not several times. I've done that a couple of times where I said, that's it. I'm getting out of this hobby. I'm selling all my stuff. I'm getting rid of it all. And then last year, a guy, he had a deal on some 28mm hoplite figures. And I asked him, like, why are you selling them? They're painted amazing. And I'll show them off soon, but they're painted amazing. Why are you getting rid of them? He's like, I can't do it anymore. I'm out of this hobby. And he gave me everything that he had. His paintbrushes, his paint, his figures, everything. He just came to my house and he gave it all to me. And I thought to myself, like, wow, that guy just did what I don't have the courage to do, and just ended it all. He just got rid of it all. And it struck me as sad, really sad, that he probably had the same problems that I'm having, and here we are, X amount of miles apart, with the same problems, a lot in common, but no idea that we're there until the end. And I keep thinking about that time, like, you know, I keep thinking about that guy giving away all of his stuff, and say to myself, like, wow, that'll be me soon enough. That'll be me soon enough. I know the video is kind of weird, like he's talking about depression, and now he's talking about wargaming, but it really is linked, and I'm trying to get to the point as best as I can, but it's hard to focus. I get tired of talking. And, you know, if you're struggling with depression or anxiety or PTSD, it's great to have a hobby. And this is one of the best hobbies to have. But what do you do when the hobby is sort of part of the problem? What do you do with a hobby that instead of being a war gamer, I'm just a collector, because I'm not playing any games. You know, I'm painting the figures and they're going away. They're being packed away, never to be seen again. When I die, my wife will have to give it all away or sell it all. She's not going to know what any of it's worth. She's not going to know, hey, I have red helmeted Macedonians and blue helmeted Macedonians, and they're different formations, and that's all gone. And it seems like such a waste. But then I think, you know, as my depression gets worse, you know, it goes up and down, but it's been getting a lot worse lately. But as my depression gets worse, collecting these figures and organizing them and painting them, it's basically all I have. It's all that's keeping me going. So on one hand, it's just a colossal waste of money and time. And on the other hand, if I don't do it, then I'm going to be doing something a lot different, a lot more extreme. I may not even be around. I don't know how else to explain it. Like, I need it essentially to keep on going. And knowing that I need it to keep going is depressing in itself. How do you explain that to someone? How do you explain that to someone who doesn't go through it with you, or who isn't going through a similar thing? You know, I love painting miniatures, but I also really, really hate it. You know, like, if I don't paint a miniature tonight, I'm going to lose my mind. Well then, but if I have to paint one more friggin' figure, I'm also going to lose my mind. You know, there's no right answer. There's no way they can help you. Like, my wife has tried, but I can't explain it to her. And that's one of the things about depression. That's why it's so hard. It's so hard because, you know, people say, talk openly, talk to people, talk to someone, go see someone. But talking to people when you have serious depression, it seems like one of the last things you want to do. I just don't want to do it. I don't want to talk about any of my problems because I don't want to even talk about them myself. And that's why it's so hard. It's so shocking for people when they hear, oh, this guy committed suicide, and they'll say, oh no, that's terrible, he was depressed, why didn't he say something, why didn't he, I wish we had hung out and had that beer. They're not going to say it to you because they don't want to say it to themselves. It's it, there's no easy answer. It's just talking about your depression to someone else is just the pits. I don't even know how else to say it. It's just the last thing you want to do. And the more you hear yourself talk about it, like I have been for 45 friggin' minutes, the more you hear yourself talk about it, the more you want to tell yourself, stop talking. Like, shut the hell up. Which I know a lot of people probably think I should be doing. But, people, they look at you and you say stuff, oh, I have depression, and they frown at you and they say, oh, chin up, oh, keep going, keep trucking. It's all just meaningless. I spoke to one of the, well, I didn't speak, but my wife told one of my most important family members, my mother, that I was struggling. And the next time she seen me, she said, oh, I hear you're sad. And that just, yeah, you know what? I am sad. But it's way worse than that. I didn't say this to her. I just said, no, I'm fine. And to hear someone say to you that you love and trust that, oh, I hear you're sad. Or everyone has problems. Oh, everyone's going through this. Everyone's going through that. It's hard for everybody. It really sucks. It really does suck. And then I come home, I sit down, and to get my mind off that, I start painting figures. Like here I am painting Waffen SS figures. I don't know why. Just for something to do. And another reason why it's hard is like professional help costs money. It costs money, and either you don't have the money to pay for it, or excuse me, or you're putting it on a Visa card or something like that. And the money, what happens if the money issue is a sense of anxiety, causes you the anxiety? Like, how am I going to afford this? Your wife or your partner will say, hey, money's no object. Get yourself the help you need. But in your mind, like, what do you happen when you go to a therapist or a psychiatrist and it's not helping, but it's costing you hundreds of dollars? I just stopped going to one of them and just stopped going because it's $200 a visit and I'm not getting anything. I'm not feeling any better. And we're now $200 more in debt. And you desperately don't want to go to work each day. Like getting up in the morning and going to work with depression is just, it's hard to explain if you don't have it. But the last thing you want to do is hear people talk about their problems that don't mean anything. Especially if you're in customer service like I am. Oh man. And you want to say something to your bosses and your coworkers. You want to say something, like you feel like you should. Like you start going through all these things like, oh, I'm not able to well, you say I'm having mental health problems, but the second you say that to any kind of upper management level, your career's over. It's either over, even if they're the best human being on the planet and they're really understanding. Do you think you're getting that next promotion to a high-stress job? No, you're not getting that. So your career's done. Basically what you're doing is you're taking medication and going to counseling and hoping that you can limit the damage at work until the help starts, until you start getting the real help. Kind of like a line, like you're damaging your career and you're hoping the pills and medication outpace that, and eventually you'll be back in some sort of like middle ground where you're able to handle things and no one's the wiser. It's kind of like a kid stealing a cookie out of the cookie jar. You take the cookie and then you look around. Did anyone see that? And the more you're forced to go to work, or the more you force yourself to go to work, for various reasons, bills, whatever, every day is like, today is the day where I'm going to fucking lose my mind. Oh, I just cursed. I'm very sorry. Today's the day that I'm going to lose my mind. Today's the day that I'm going to say something, or I'm going to break, or I'm going to yell at someone, or something. And that is like a every second thing. And all you want to do when you get home, or all I want to do when I get home, is sit down, start painting figures. I am starting to paint so many bloody figures I've been showing these off for only a couple of weeks. I'm at 8,000 figures. And I'm not even a quarter of the way through. And I painted probably this year. I do watch a YouTube video called Gorilla Miniatures Games, and over the last couple of years, he's been like counting how many figures he paints each week and what his total was for the year. And I do what he does in a year, not to brag. I'm not trying to brag, but I do what he does in a year in like 2 weeks. He'll be like, "Oh, I painted 45 figures this week." Man, I'm at 300. Like, what's wrong with me? And I have kids too. I have a wife, a kid. It's odd, but that's what this kind of like disease is doing to me. This mental disease is doing to me. It's wargaming is there to save me, but it's also I'm quickly running out of time with it. It's an odd thing. I know it's a bit rambly. I'm sorry, but maybe if you're suffering through the same thing, maybe a lot of this stuff is familiar to you and it helps to hear someone go on about it. But if you've gotten it this far, 50 minutes into a video, then you're really you're a hero. I'm going to try and like end it somewhere here, but I just wanted to say that like this is what leads me to my point after 50 minutes of baloney, is that when you're fighting depression, does your hobby help you? Or does it hinder you? Like, I'd like to know. Like, I'm assuming it's probably helping you, but is anyone out there like me where it's helping but also hurting? It's got some humongous upsides, massive ones. I mentioned those earlier. But it's also got its downsides too. And I find that life as I knew it is kind of over. Fighting this disease for the last year. This will be a struggle for the rest of my life. I'm never going to get over this. Even if I start feeling better, I'm going to know that this happened. From now until I croak. And, all it is now is it's kind of about making what kind of life you can. What can I live with? What kind of problems can I live with and function with? And still find some happiness. And the more and more I think about it, the more and more I'm like, God, this painting these figures and collecting these things and clipping them off their bases and rebasing them and all this stuff. Should I get rid of all this stuff, and toss it all and start fresh? Or move on to something else? I mean, I've gained 100 pounds this week. This week. Wow. This year. I've gained 100 pounds this year. I don't do anything. I sit, I do nothing. I just can't do anything. It's hard. A person in the field, they once told me, when I was going through this process, they once told me that it's a terrible thing, depression, because in the end, it's a very lonely fight, even with all the help. Because the ones that can truly understand what you're going through are also the ones that are going through it themselves. So it's like the blind leading the blind, or the vulnerable helping the vulnerable. The people who are not fighting depression, they mean well, and they'll say all the things. But they can't, unless they're going through it, there's no way to explain it. What it's like. So maybe me talking, and if you've still been listening, maybe hearing me talk helps in some way. I don't know. Not only the people who can change anything about the stigma of mental health, they're the same ones, the same people, they're the same people who are actually suffering from it. And that's why I started this channel. It's as a way to turn, or to try and turn, my hobby, the hobby part of my depression, into something positive instead of something negative. Because it's quickly has been turning into something negative over the last while. And getting the figures out and putting them on the table and showing them off and talking about them is sort of soothing that part of the fight. And in a like I said earlier, in a hobby that can be and has been for me an extremely lonely experience, posting the videos online has been a little rewarding for me, and it's 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 been nice. Seeing the subscribers and seeing the comments, it's really helped. And if you're suffering from depression or PTSD or anxiety or anything like that, I urge you to speak to someone. Like everyone says, I urge you to speak to someone. Speak to a professional and just let someone know. Reach out. And even if it's to me, you can talk to me. I mean, I probably can. I'm probably on the same boat as you, I guess. Even reach out to me, because I know reaching out to someone who doesn't go through it is daunting. But even talk to me, even send me a message. Describe to me what you've been going through. Like I said earlier, misery loves company. Maybe you hearing me complain and me hearing you complain, maybe we can get a laugh out of it. I don't know. And I know firsthand the issues that people deal with. I've been going through them now for many years, and the last year has been the toughest year of my life, and I still don't even know what the year ahead will bring me. But, give me a shout if you need to talk. And, the stigma of mental health, it's overwhelming. And I'm going to take a page from that professional that I just mentioned from their book. And I urge you, if you can't talk to someone, just message me and we can have a talk. We can have a chat. Can't promise you it'll go anywhere or I'll be able to help at all, but maybe verbalizing it or writing it down and sending it to someone who I won't judge, maybe that'll help you too. And also I'll leave it with one more thing, is that if you are suffering from depression or you're just going through it or you're starting to seek help, one of the scariest parts about this has been the medication. I have found that the medication has been almost worse than the depression itself. It's helping. It is helping. But like I said earlier, everyone is different, and there's different types of medication. Some medications do one thing, some medications do another thing. Sometimes you need to take a couple of both. It's basically you're a guinea pig until they find the right concoction. All I'm saying is, I'll finalize it with this, is that if you're taking medication and it's not working, talk to your doctor, get them to switch your medication to something else, and try something different. And it sucks because they'll say the new medication will take 4 to 6 weeks. They told me when I was switching from one to another, you need to wean yourself off the one for 4 weeks and then wean yourself onto another one for 4 weeks. So it could be 6 to 8 weeks before you start seeing any difference. That's a hell of a long time for someone. That's a nightmare long time for someone who's suffering. And I urge you, if you're taking medications, not to give up. Just do what I did, paint Waffen SS, for instance, or a Mordor troll, or an Isengard troll, or do something to calm yourself down. Watch The Hobbit, watch The Lord of the Rings, paint. You don't have to talk to anyone. You can message me if you want, but just let the medication do its thing. It does eventually work. Anyway, that's it for me. I really appreciate to anyone who's listened for a whole friggin' hour, and I'm sorry it's so long, but it's more of a self-help thing than anything else. Anyway, thanks for listening. I'll talk later. Bye.